It's Monday.
You're early. And
I
now
know.
it's a glorious Monday.
I know I was early.
We're back at it. Mental Health Monday. Today, of course, we got another guest with us. Darreon Nihiser. Welcome to Mental Health Monday.
Hey guys, what's up?
Yo, what's up, man?
Nothing much.
So, oh look, we already got people lining up.
Oh, hey.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that the next hour.
Yeah.
So, Darreon, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so essentially what I do is my official role is adult group therapist. I do a lot of like psychoeducation and kind of just like process groups with clients at my center. I won't mention the name of the center necessarily, but it's more of like an intensive like outpatient clinic where we provide like group therapy, substance use, individual therapy, psychiatry, a lot of things like that, including like nursing and other services. But yeah, I run different groups throughout the days, and maybe one day we'll be teaching about different skills in the CBT modality and the DBT modality, the ACT modality, right? So that and a few other things, but that's just like a broad kind of summary of what I do, right?
So what led you to that?
What led me to like the mental health journey just goes so far back, like high school. You know, I always kind of wanted to be a therapist. And just like it started out as like a desire to just help people, right? And just because I thought like psych was one of those extracurriculars that was actually fun at my school. And so I took it and I liked it and I just kept running with it like 10 years later, you know.
We're getting a question in here. What's DBT?
DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. And it's a modality that's kind of under the umbrella of cognitive behavior therapy, except with this, it's for more people who are less regulated than more neurotypical people, right? So it's for people with like really heavy, maybe substance issues, with bipolar disorder, with borderline personality disorder. And it basically talks a lot about like our emotions on the day to day, or it'll talk a lot about like interpersonal effectiveness, like how to communicate effectively with people and communicating effectively your kind of wants and needs. It deals a lot in like that kind of like realm. It has some CBT elements in it, but it's different than CBT. It was created by Marsha Linehan, and I'm not sure what the time period was, but Marsha Linehan herself, funny enough, actually made the modality for DBT while she was in residential for her bipolar diagnosis, right? And it's something like she kind of worked on even like after like getting out of residential, and that's the crowd it was made for, and it's evidence-based and it's really effective, you know? Yeah.
I think she's just going to keep asking what these initials mean.
Yeah.
I think I can break down that one. That's cognitive behavioral.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Someone asked about CBT, huh? Yeah. CBT, I mean, that one's older, right? It was made by Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck, right? And it's a modality that they both like worked on and debated about a lot. And with this one, as opposed to DBT, CBT kind of proposes that we have more control over our cognition in general. DBT doesn't suppose that. DBT suggests that we have like less control over our cognitions. So in CBT, right, you have different models. You have your ABC model, right? And in CBT, you are tracking, right, how your thoughts and your kind of core beliefs affect your emotions and behaviors, as well as like physical sensations, even though it's not in the typical modality. We kind of point out physical sensations as something we need to keep track of as well, because it'll hint at what emotional state we're going in, right? And it'll give us kind of like warning flags when maybe something's about to happen, you know? Yeah.
Word.
Yeah.
Shep, you got any questions over there? I know you'd like to just sit back and
Yeah, no, I'm glad we're getting these. I didn't know what a lot of these things were. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad we're getting the explanations on the DBT and the CBT.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I mean, both of those are pretty popular. The one that I guess I haven't covered that I might as well, since I covered the other two popular ones, is like acceptance and commitment therapy, right? It's acceptance and commitment therapy is basically DBT, but just more abstract, right? Like DBT is a more tangible skill with more, or I guess more tangible modality with more tangible skills, right? It talks about in distress tolerance, you can kind of bring yourself down from an emotionally elevated state by using your body, right? By taking a cold shower, by getting some intense exercise real quick, and alleviating kind of like the some of the physical like anxiety you build up in a situation, right? ACT is it uses a lot of metaphors because it is really abstract, and it talks about how much life can improve and how much you can be effective with your own life um, when you just learn to accept your situations, right? When you learn to accept that one of your parents is verbally abusive, when you learn to accept that COVID is a reality, right? Once you accept the reality of certain situations, not just external, but internal, emotionally and cognitively, mentally, right? Then you can move forward to the commitment part, right? We're accepting situations so that we can stop trying to control the uncontrollable, right? And once we learn how to do that, we got to have some sense of control, right? So if we're not trying to control the uncontrollable, then the next best thing we can do is control our own behaviors, right? That's what a lot of focuses with these therapies are, is like focusing on what you can do, right? And ACT just says, well, look at your values. What are your values are? Like, what are your values? Sorry. So like, what are your values? And then move forward in a situation, move forward with a sense of control with those values in mind, you know? So that's what that is.
Yeah, a lot of that sounds like just got the, different, looking at things from a different sounds like that kind of falls under that category. Because that's something I think we touch on just about every Monday is changing your perspective on situations. And I think, like you just said, accepting situations that you're in is that looking at it a different way, sort of thing. Yeah. I know for me that like I usually know how to deal with my anxiety or depression, and when it definitely gets to its worst point is when I feel like I don't know what to do. Like if I feel like I've tried everything and like it's not working and I don't know how to fix the scenario, or even worse, I can't figure out what the problem is, I will just spiral at that point.
Yeah, spiraling is scary, man. Especially if you're dealing with both anxiety and depression. I mean, those two things I kind of see at my site kind of go hand in hand. You know, people can tend to get depressed that they have some kind of general anxiety disorder, or might get anxious because they're depressed, and depression can just cause fatigue and kind of lack of interest in shit, and it cause a lot of stuff that puts shit off, right? Causes a lot of procrastination or whatever else might happen, and then you start getting anxiety over that. Or maybe you have maybe someone has someone will come in with some type of already kind of cognitive issue, right? Or some kind of thinking pattern that's causing both of those, right? It can be really easy to get trapped in those cognitive distortions when you're dealing with mental illness, you know?
Yeah, my mother said just about the same thing to me last night, that my depression is probably coming from the fact that I am depressed about being anxious, about my anxiety problems. Because especially this past week has just been nuts.
Yeah.
I have just I watched some video. It came across my YouTube suggestions, and it was about depression. And I've always had this attitude about my depression of I can handle my depression. Like if depression comes on, like I can usually wait it out. Like I know it's not going to be a forever thing.
Yeah.
But anxiety always feels like it's this constantly evolving beast. Like every time I figure out how to take care of it, it alters in some way. And now I'm again trying to figure out how to take care of that. And this past week, watching that video, especially as it's kind of ticking off all of these things about depression, I realized that, perhaps I've been downplaying the depression side of things, or it's, what my mother suggested about you're probably feeling so depressed because of your anxiety. And it's just this cycle.
Yeah.
And I've definitely I've just had no energy. I have no focus whatsoever. I can't even get into doing the things that I enjoy doing. And it's definitely been a bummer, but I'm trying. I'm trying. When you were like, you want to reschedule for tomorrow? I'm like, nah, this is what Mental Health Mondays are all about.
Yeah. Great, man. Well, I'm sorry you're dealing with that. Almost everyone deals with some kind of not I don't know, everyone like at some point in life deals with a period of anxiety like or depression, right? But when it gets disordered is when it just lasts and lasts and lasts for as long as you could remember, right? And another thing that makes it disordered is just how it affects like your daily living, right? Or how you communicate with others, or like how you're like taking care of yourself. There are points where it can be crippling, and some people also learn to manage with depression for their entire life, seemingly. Like the way I kind of see mental health disorders is like I see any other kind of like physical ailment, right? Like a breakup might as well be kind of like a broken limb, right? I mean, I know like the comparison might be a little like crude for some people, but like you would go to your dentist, right? You would go to your primary care provider, your like family doctor, right? You would also go to your therapist for similar reasons. It's all health, like your mind, your body, your soul, it's all connected, right? So I don't know. I really like advocate like people even who don't feel like anything's wrong to still go and like maybe like see a therapist or get some type of mental health consultation, right? Just as a checkup. It's just like a checkup.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I mean, just to like kind of like go back to what you're talking about with your depression and what you're dealing with kind of reminds me of, I don't know, just a question I wanted to ask of like, what is something you wanted to get back to, right?
Well, I mean, like I know for one big thing is like Chase and Shep stuff. I mean, just being able to write right now, trying to get some of our scripts written and stuff has just been very difficult to sit down and focus on. And it doesn't help that my anxiety disorder it converts it physically, so I have these seizures and stuff because of it, and that's kind of been why I don't know. You asked us, before we started the show, kind of what led us to doing the Mental Health Mondays. And it was pretty much that. It was pretty much the condition that I have, pseudo seizures, or what they're called, or psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, and it was something that I had to go on my own journey and figure out for myself. I had to go see a therapist. I had to figure out ways to cope and deal with it, because most doctors kind of shrug their shoulders at me and go, we don't know what to do about this. And there's just so much in the years dealing with this, and especially as it became harder and harder for me to work, and it was really affecting my life. A lot of it's just the way things are so stigmatized even today. And that's definitely a big push behind Mental Health Monday, was to start talking about things more and breaking some of those stigmas, because it is surprising sometimes to me just how stigmatized some of this stuff still is. But at the same time, I can't say I don't go through it. I do understand it in a sense where there are days where I was just talking to my cousin last night, where there are days where I feel like, am I just crazy? Am I just making shit up in my head? But when it comes down to it, hell no. I would not choose to live my life this way. This is miserable. I don't choose to be this way. But I do have to choose how to handle it, how to deal with it, and move forward.
Yeah. I'm sorry to deal with that, man. It sounds tough. I mean, I don't know what it's like, but it still sounds tough. And I hope you're getting like some decent like help or like attending to that in some way.
Oh, definitely. I've got a pretty dope therapist. she's pretty good, and I've taken a lot of that, and that's kind of what led me into getting into Buddhism and stuff like that as well, and just the spirituality side of things. That really helped me in dealing with anxiety and just trying to calm things down and start looking at life in a little more simpler terms. Because I think as human beings, we tend to complicate things more so than we need to. A lot of stress is usually self-made.
Yeah, I mean, with stress, it depends, right? There's a lot of contributors to stress. It could be self-made, right? And that's largely what it is, right? And when we look at it, like, how is it self-made? Like, is it self-made in the sense that we're working ourselves up? Is it self-made in the sense that maybe our neurochemistry is a little off, right? Like, what might it be? Or maybe it's like a mixture of both, And also like those external factors, right? Like, it's stressful having any type of loss. It's stressful being isolated at some points during COVID, right? And maybe you're dealing with those like external kind of like sources and those internal sources, right? Which can turn stress into anything, right? Which is where we get into that kind of like mental health, like illness zone, as if that all those forms of stress combine and they last like so long. They just last over time, Yeah, man.
How does mental health affect you, Shep?
Well, like, I've went through my depressions, my ups and downs, and I wouldn't say it's really ever been out of the norm from a regular person, to, obviously go through breakups. I've went through divorces, stuff like that. I've had some traumas, I'll never say that, but the therapy that I always chose never was in an office or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? It was a different route. I chose to go around, get to see the world and talk to people and learn and figure out life and how I felt. And a lot of it was, self-reflection and stuff. So I've got to see mental health affect a lot of people around me in my life, even since I was a child up till now. So I'm glad that I don't, have to deal with it anymore out of the norm, like than what we're already talking about. A lot of my depression's always been self-made. I get into a funk and I keep myself there just because, why not? What does it matter? And all that kind of shit. You have to work it up. You have to build yourself up and get out of that. Or, anxieties. Again, I did music when I was way young, so I got to go on stage in front of tons of people I didn't know and do these songs me and my buddies wrote. And so when you do those things, it kills a lot of anxiety in life. You're like, oh, go up and talk to that person. Shit, whatever. Okay. And then, especially going around the world too, because it's like, damn, I hope to fuck I never see this person again. So I can go up and say what's up. But you were talking like you feel like everybody should, even if they feel good, even if it's like a checkup, like a consultation, go see. So like to add, a question on my end to it would be somebody like me, who's never been doing that. How do you go about figuring that? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it starts with doing like you can start a couple different ways. One way it can start is like kind of like on your own, like starting your own journey. And I think that all kind of depends on like, oh, I noticed like I've been doing this quote unquote like bad thing a lot, right? So maybe I do like some self-research, right? It can start at research. It starts with just like learning about like anxiety in general and depression, right? And not learning about mental illness from like a Reddit post or anything, but like going to like a YouTube channel that features like hypnotherapists or psychiatrists or family doctors or something, and listening to what professionals have to say about the topic, right? And then maybe once you've done like your own exploration, maybe you decide you want to give like therapy a try, and then like you could still do your own research and kind of like looking at, okay, I'm this demographic, let me look for this type of demographic of person, right? And you could do private practice, you could do like an individual company, like it's up to you really. And you just give them a call, and can ask for more information. The way that a lot of people at my site have gotten mental health care is because they had maybe like they got hospitalized because they were threatening suicide, or they were just using too many substances, got hospitalized for an overdose. It's a lot of hospitalizations you might see, or maybe they spent some time to kind of like reflect on some kind of like trauma or something, right? And brought themselves in. So like one of those two kind of methods. Now, kind of like a word of like caution, I guess it's not caution, but just something to be mindful of is that even if you think you're fine, you're going in and out like the day to day, doing your thing, and you're happy, right? And then you decide, maybe I do want to try some mental health treatment, right? You might find out some things you didn't know that you might not have wanted to know, right? You might open some kind of can of worms, right? You might unlock kind of like some old trauma you didn't think was trauma or something like that, right? So that's one thing to be aware of if you want to go into kind of like kind of that exploration, that mental health journey, I guess. For some people, it's more mental health and a little spiritual, and for other people, it's like equal sides of both, right? And kind of like you were mentioning earlier, Shep, like when you are dealing with your kind of mental health stuff, like it's healthy to feel those feelings, right? If you're having that anxiety, let yourself feel that anxiety for a little bit and give it its space. I think issues can really kind of come about when those feelings come up and you keep denying them, right? Because one, they're telling you something. Your emotions are always telling you stuff, right? Everything your brain is experiencing, the information is giving you, like especially the neurochemical information, like emotions, that means, hey, something's happening, right? Or you need to attend to this, right? That's why I kind of like, I really encourage like thoughts, sure, give them some attention, right? But emotions are the most important to like give attention to, right? Because they can be your warning signs, right? If you have an interview coming up and you're getting an anxiety kind of like not episode, but you're just getting those emotions coming up, right? Those are anticipatory emotions, right? It's that anxiety is telling you, hey, something's coming up, get ready, right? And at the same time, where it can be more ineffective, right, when you might need to go get some consultation or maybe some help, is when that anxiety is like so high that you're having a panic attack just thinking about an interview, right? Maybe that takes some attending to, but yeah, just kind of word to the wise about if you notice nothing's kind of coming up for you on the day-to-day, or you don't really have some kind of concrete reason to go to therapy, some things might come up that you weren't prepared to like hear.
Here's something for you. So I've noticed, a few people in my life that will try therapy out, and on their first go, they really don't like the therapist that they have. And there's usually because I've had two different therapists in my life, and the first one I didn't vibe with as well, but the second one, I mean, I've been seeing her for years, and I've seen a lot of people just give up after that first try.
Yeah.
But I've also seen a lot of people who go to therapy thinking that it is the therapist's job to fix you. When it's, more so the therapists are there to give you tools. And it's a lot of self-work and looking inward. And we're very pro feel your feelings here at Chase and Shep. So we're definitely with everything you're just saying.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to talk about is like therapy's not going to help you until you're ready for that help, you know. There are people who come to treatment. I have a patient in my cohort right now who's here. And I heard about this, but I don't know what this is. My coworker mentioned this person having like main character syndrome, right? Where in their life, they are the center of the universe, right? And everyone else around them is kind of there for the ride, right? And I kind of see that play out. I think this person, they wanted to come to therapy and get help on some things, right? But when you kind of like are pointing out like, hey, you need to work on this, they don't feel like they need to. This person's probably not going to get a lot out of treatment because they're not going into it with an open mind. That's kind of what it takes. It takes like the desire to change. It also takes kind of like a curiosity. It takes curiosity, right? It takes kind of like curiosity and also vulnerability, you know, and that vulnerability is just going to help you throughout the whole thing. And you're going to feel hurt at some points, and you're supposed to feel hurt at some points, and you're going to feel progress and then probably some hurt again. And that's just kind of like the general treatment model. And I think one of your fans just said, please, I am the main character. Don't entertain that, because you know, it doesn't do you a lot of favors to act that out. Having that main character mentality might be able to help you, right? It might be something that says, you know what, I do deserve to advocate for my needs. I do deserve this interview. I do deserve this raise, right? I deserve this high test score, whatever it might be, right? That kind of aspect can help you, right? But when you're kind of talking to people and interacting with people with that in mind and how maybe they're background characters, then that's not going to be helpful in treatment and life, you know, whatever.
Right.
If you look at it as everybody's the main character of their own story, all right.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, you good then.
Yeah.
But when you're thinking, that's just an NPC, fuck them. Okay.
Yeah. We're talking with the video game metaphor because like that's a helpful mentality too to have, because it's the truth, basically, right? We're all the main characters of our own lives, right? Mm-hmm. Like we don't matter to anyone else more than ourselves, right? We know what we need most, even if we don't know it consciously. Subconsciously, we know what we need. We know what we want, right? And sometimes it takes like some digging with another person, right? Sometimes we do need to bounce that out. It's a good parallel with how people bounce out their emotions with art, with making music, with making movies, with making, I don't know, whatever your art outlet is. We can relate through that somehow, right? Which is how some forms of therapy are useful, right? And the same thing can happen when you're talking to another person. I mean, another person might as well be a work of art in and of themselves. We're all complex. That's why therapy can help. That's why therapy works, right? It's because we can have all these ideas in our head and all these goals in our head and all of this junk just swirling around, right? But we also have 10,000 thoughts a day, right? So we might be trying to figure out our own issues, right? Which can be helpful, right? And at the same time, therapy is useful for a lot of people because of how those ruminating thoughts can kind of like get that self-evaluation trapped up, right? So, yeah.
I definitely think that educating yourself on mental health is important. Even if, like you were saying, even if you don't think something's necessarily wrong with you, you deal with something. You know, I've in my own journey, I've researched other disorders and other mental health problems and stuff, and in doing that, it has helped me understand other people better in my life. It even alleviates some problems in my life, whereas before with certain people, like, you know, I didn't know a whole lot about bipolar disorder for a while. And being around people who are bipolar, it's very easy to get offended by these people. It's very easy to just be like, whoa, where's this coming from? Like, why are you a dick? Like, you know, and now that I understand it better, it's something that helps me deal with those people. I'm more patient with them. I'm more loving and caring of these people because I've educated myself more. And I know since going through everything that I've been going through, this started for me at the end of 2015, I believe. And since then, my mother has educated herself a ton on mental health issues, and I've seen how that's affected her life with those around her. She's able to spot things earlier on with my youngest sister now. Things that she can look in hindsight and be like, this makes a lot more sense with my kids, and why they acted the way they acted, and what this might be and what this might be. So I definitely advocate for educating yourself on mental health.
Yeah, I agree.
I've definitely done my fair share of reading into a lot of different things on mental health over the time.
Yeah, it's something, it can be like even like kind of interesting to just dive into, and it could also be like helpful when you kind of like see like I don't know, popular figures, for example, like when you see Kanye, right? And I don't know what your opinions are on Kanye, but I have my own opinions on Kanye. And it's like people see him and they see him standing on a table lecturing at people at a school, right? And they go, "Oh, he's so prolific. He's such a great artist. Like, this is what a genius looks like, right?" And it's like, well, he is like one of like he's like one of like the greatest like musical artists in our time, right? And at the same time, he deals with bipolar disorder as well, right? He has his manic episodes, right? He's had a lot of transformations in his life. He's had his weight issues and substance abuse issues. He's had his manic and depressive episodes. He's had loss of family that probably made those worse, right? And I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it had something to do with what you were saying. But like, yeah, kind of when you that's where I was going. When you kind of like understand like what people are what people can go through, like mental health wise, it does help your understanding and your outlook on life, right? Because then you don't see this person as like a bad object. You see them as an object that could use some help, or an object that's sick, that can be sick, right? Just like you would view someone who has like a heart condition, or someone who has diabetes, right? Someone with bipolar or someone with borderline personality disorder. They're gonna say and do some fucked up shit, and it's because of what's going on like in their mind, And that in itself is already tough enough, right? Like having bipolar and having borderline and having like general anxiety or maybe autism spectrum disorder, right? Being kind of like on the spectrum, that can lead to other shit, right? Like, for example, today I had a new group member at my cohort, and they were periodically having episodes throughout the day. They told me that they were having auditory hallucinations as the group was going on, right? And it was kind of difficult kind of balancing like helping them and helping the whole group when I'm alone. But kind of like when you have bipolar disorder like that patient had, that can bring on other symptoms of other shit, right? Like if you know that someone's like having auditory hallucinations, what are you thinking, right? When you hear hallucinations, maybe you're thinking schizophrenia, maybe you're thinking psychosis or something, right? But like disorders so invasive and so acute and so chronic, they can bring on effects of schizophrenia, like the hallucinations, right? Drugs can do the same thing, right? Any kind of amphetamines. There are a lot of stimulants out there that if you're just taking so much every single day, those can bring about symptoms. Those can bring about symptoms of even just not even like the scarier stuff, right? Like schizophrenia or like just other kind of like psychotic disorders. It can bring on depression and anxiety, depending on, of course, your situation, your cognitive tools, your amount of use, things like that, right? Yeah.
Something that was thrown at me once I was in a relationship years ago that wasn't the greatest, and I had talked to somebody about it, and I was explaining to them that she deals with her own mental issues, and I was basically told that at a certain point, that's not an excuse in a relationship. I'm trying to think of how to word this, but that was interesting to me. That was something that I definitely had to grapple with. Like, where is that line of understanding where they're coming from because of what they deal with, and then, what's too much? For me, I think I got to the point where I realized she had no desire to help herself, which was where I drew my line with where making excuses because she has a mental issue was not okay at a certain point.
Could you clarify the situation? So she was having some mental health challenges going on, and
she exhibited a lot of, I believe, borderline personality stuff. I had looked into it more. She was the one that introduced this idea to me, that she was the one that had it. So, I was like, okay, well, thanks for telling me this. I will look into this. I will do research so that I can understand you better, so that we can work through this. But then she'd backtrack and be like, no, now you're just calling me crazy and all this other stuff. And then she, wouldn't want to get help, and she would gaslight me a lot. She put a lot of stuff on me, and at a certain point, and she had OCD as well. And that I learned a lot. I learned a lot about OCD with her, because that's something that when most people think OCD, they think, oh, they're just like hyper clean and very like anal retentive. And I don't think people understand just how complicated OCD can be for some people. And so there were a lot of times where I would forgive her behavior because of these things, even though she wouldn't get the help for these things. I would forgive her because I did the research and I understood what was happening. But at a certain point, when I sort of lived with her. But at a certain point, when I realized that she was just taking a lot of stuff out on me and had no desire to go and help herself out of her own situations, I realized that, okay, this is more abusive now, it seems, rather than, I don't know, I felt like I was making excuses for her at a certain point.
Yeah, sounds like a tough situation, man. I don't know. With all this diagnosing, maybe you should go into mental health. Sounds like you've been doing your research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did almost go to school for psych at the end of last year, but then the Chase Shep show happened, and the rest is history.
You can't do both?
I am doing both. That's what we're doing right now.
Okay. I was talking about the schooling part, but okay, I get you.
I hear you.
Yeah, but yeah, man, it's tough. When you are kind of like seeing these things and like people and they don't have any kind of like desire to change their behavior, despite like your insights, and you're kind of like not completely objective, but semi-objective, because if it's someone you love, especially like with a partner, like our views on our partner are always going to be biased, right? Because they're our partner, right? Regardless if that's your wife, girlfriend, husband, boyfriend, fiance, whatever, them, their friend, whatever it might be, right? Yeah, that's tough, man, because some people just don't want help. And the most that you can do in those situations is just accept the fact that they don't want help, because then it'll only help you, right? And it'll help you do what you need to do to get out of the situation, right? So, yeah.
I was in that same boat once too, in a relationship with somebody with BPD. That's a tough one to have to deal with, man. Having to watch her go through that was fucked up too. But at the end of the day, it's just like, when you ain't going and taking them steps to help yourself, there ain't no help I can give you. I'm giving you all the support I can, but it's not working because you're not taking that initial step to go help yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's how I started bonding too, Shep. When we first met, I was in that relationship and we had that conversation.
Yeah. No, because it was, it was opening for me because that was the first person with like a serious, huge mental illness that I was in a relationship with. And, it was one of those that I didn't really know because it was just a girl I'd met and we'd crossed paths and dated for a few months and broke up for a while. And then when we got back together real quick, it was like, we should get married. She hit me up, we should get married. And I was like, oh shit. Well, I ain't never going to have a girl ask me to get married again. So why not say sure? And then it was, oh shit. Well, it's a leap year. We should just get married on February 29th, in 2 weeks. Because that's, and it was like, okay. And then next thing you know, it's like, borderline personality disorder. And it's like, oh, wow.
What are some things you thought made her borderline? What were some of that?
I mean, this was like, she knew, like it was confirmed by her that she was, but it was one of the
diagnosed.
Oh yeah. And it was one of those things that, like when we first were getting, we got married, she's like, no, I got it under control. I've been seeing my therapist. I take my medicine, this and that. And it's like, okay, well, I'm a musician. She was an entertainer as well. So she was on the road a lot. I was doing concerts a lot. So, that was the part where we vibed a lot with our relationship, and why we were so good was because I understood her like no other guys, besides people within the same business, which she didn't like. At the time she was all like, I don't want to be with anybody in my business. It was like, I understood being an entertainer and your image and your brand and all this kind of shit. Like even now I won't like name drop her or no shit. Cause I ain't trying to, fuck her brand up or no shit. But, she, oh, I'm great. And then next thing you know, I'm trying to learn about a disease. Like, and with her, it's just one of those things. It's like, well, can I go with you to your, when you talk to your therapist, can I go with you and be there? Like, we're married. Can I be there too? Maybe talk to her. She'd be like, no. Okay. Well, what more at that point can I do there besides go, all right. And then it's like, oh, I stopped taking my medicine, but you'll never find that out. Like the day she's like, hey, I think today I'm going to stop taking my medicine. No, it's, oh, I stopped taking my medicine, 2 months ago.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, that's why things have been shit lately. You should not do that. Or I haven't really been going and seeing my therapist. I've been just going to the park and sitting there. And it's like, so I, like where Chase is at, it's like I vibe with that, like it got to a point where I had to look at myself and go like, my mental health is on the line right now because I'm starting to get real fucked up here by having somebody, because it got to a point where she'd tell me I was like, oh, you're so disgusting and stuff. And I was just like sitting around making music. I'm like, how am I disgusting? And then she'd be like, why don't you want to come cuddle with me right now? It's like, you just called me disgusting, dude. That's why, like, shit, I feel like a loser. And you gotta, I had to start. There was a lot of things going on in my life at the time too, and you have to start looking at your own mental health and being like, we're not really being good for each other right now because my mental health is going south too with yours. She was clearly depressed towards the end of our relationship, and it was just not good. And it's like you need to get out there and get help. And I need to get back on my feet and get my mind right. And it took like for me it took a while, and she was that type of person. It's like you got to be thrown out. She had to be thrown out there until she had no other options. She wouldn't try to get the help she needed. But I think she's doing good now. I don't know, but
yeah, let's hope so. Right.
I really do though, because even I had many conversations and I tell her like deep down she's a great person. All that shit that went south between me and her, then that was all that shit going down up there. There's nothing that I could do at all to prevent or change or any of that, unless she wanted to get the help. And I like I said, I believe she has since. This is dope.
Yeah. it sounds like you wanted to advocate for her like treatment too, asking her about her meds and wanting to go to her appointments and stuff.
I just wanted to learn about it and be able to learn, like she, like I could talk about borderline personality all day with her and get what she has to tell me about it. But it's like, well, can I go talk to your therapist and be like, so how do I, if she's in one of these episodes, what's the best way of, for me to deal with that? What's the best way for me to remind her, of reality and get her, where she's disassociating and how, like, how do I deal with that? Cause I had no experience. So of course, if she laid in bed for 4 days, there'd get to a point where I'd be like, God damn it, you should take care of yourself. You're just laying in bed, and that's not what she needed to hear.
Yeah.
It would get a complete opposite of what we were, what I was trying to accomplish is like, hey, get up and take a shower. Let's get, get something to eat. Like we'd argue and she'd, just go right back to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. Now she told you she had borderline or bipolar disorder?
Borderline personality disorder.
Okay. Yeah. And then I guess like with that, I wanted to ask you too, Chase, what made you think that your former partner had those diagnoses? What kind of tripped you off to that based on your kind of
what got me started down that path was that she said it. Like she just said it outright. Like this is what I have. And as I realized that she hadn't, been diagnosed with it, I did my own research because I didn't know anything about borderline. So I read up on it, and the more I read up on it, the more boxes were being checked. And I'm like, yeah, it seems like a lot of this shit goes down on a pretty regular basis in this relationship. And so it was one of those things that I tried to advocate for her treatment and stuff. And I was in therapy at the time, and before I met her, I had just come back from living in Tennessee, and I was dealing with my seizures, and I built myself up, and I figured out ways to deal with my anxiety and my depression. And when I entered into this relationship with her, she started chipping away at those things, and she pretty much told me that she was like intentionally like breaking me down at times. And I'm like, that's just not cool. Like you can't do this to me. And so, I started advocating for, I think maybe you should go see a therapist as well. With everything that you're telling me and everything that you think is wrong with you, from the research I'm doing here, it sounds like that might be the case. But I'm not a therapist. I'm not a professional to sit here and go, yes, like this is it. And she would do things similar to what Shep was just saying, where, just really fuck with my head, a lot of stuff. Like especially like sex stuff. She would be like, she would tell me she didn't want to have sex. She's like, it's not something I want to do until we're like married and all that stuff. Like it's just not something. And I completely respected that. I said that's absolutely fine. But then she'd be sitting there and then go, why don't you ever initiate anything? Why don't you ever like come on to me? Why don't you ever do these things? And I told her, you told me you don't want to have sex. And she's like, oh, well, I do. And then I'd have this whole conversation with her about, I do not want to do something if it's not something you want to do. And it's something I take very seriously. And I have this whole conversation with her, and then we would have sex, and at the end of it, she'd be like, I didn't want to do that. You can't do this to me. That's not okay. What is happening here? This is not okay. Like you are, it's not right. But I pushed for the therapy, and by the end of that relationship, she did start going to therapy. But it just felt like the wrong reasons. It felt like it was turning into this pissing contest. Whereas like I'd go see my therapist and talk to her and come back with like, she'd give me methods to talk to my girlfriend, like things like, I'm sure you're familiar with like, I'm trying to think of what it is, like certain phrases, like wording things in a way that's not placing blame and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. Probably like using dialectics or something.
Yeah. And so, she'd give me these things to go back and talk with her. Whereas she'd go talk to her therapist and just come back and tell me, like, oh, well, she says this, and this about you. And I'm just like, well, do you do the same thing with your therapist that you do with your friends and family, where you just make shit up about me all the time and omit details about stories, and then when I'm there and they're hearing the other parts of it, they're like, oh, well, that changes things quite substantially. I'm like, I didn't ask you to go to therapy so that you could just come and be an asshole to me. Like, I didn't ask you to go get backup. I wanted you to go get help because I love you, and I do want this to work, because I did love her. I loved her a lot. That's why we were in a relationship for as long as we were. But at the same time, I had done a lot of work at that point to work on my own mental health, where I knew where I had to draw a line and say, I have to take care of myself. If you're willing to take care of yourself, I'm sorry, and I gotta go my separate ways here.
Yeah, you have to do what's right for you in those moments, man. Yeah. We have a lot of people who come in with wanting to learn about like how they can communicate and advocate for their partner who's also dealing with like mental health challenges. And first off, I just want to say that I'm sorry y'all went through that. That would be like so confusing constantly, and so just emotionally draining and frustrating, just at like every single point in the relationship, And also that wherever those ladies are, I hope they're doing well, getting the help that they need and thriving in life.
No, for real though. For real.
I do too, for sure.
Yeah. But it's a challenge, man, because I think whenever I've seen relationships with borderline people kind of finding themselves thriving in relationships, it's not with people who are more neurotypical and their like ways of thinking. They'll sometimes get with like and stay with like people who have narcissistic personality disorder, right? Because they'll be able to like constantly like reaffirm like the other person, and the narcissist is just going to eat it up, right? Like, I don't know how it always happens, but it happens like a lot, right? And I'm not like trying to like label either of you. I'm just saying like when borderline people get in relationships that they find themselves like having some success in, it's a lot of times with people who have like a lot of narcissistic traits. So that's what I was kind of thinking. I was like, I hope those ladies are not in other relationships where that's kind of like going on. But
yeah, I would hope not either. I know I don't give off any sorts of narcissism traits. I know for mine was more so she was wanting to live, like a nice stable life that we should, we should have at our age, and then have her entertainer life on the side. And that's where we started butting heads originally, was because I was like, yo, you're involved in all my entertainment life. You go to all my concerts, all this shit, but on your end, you won't even let me go to it. Like, that's kind of,
But that sucks, man. That sucks. But I mean, out of that, y'all made a whole podcast, and y'all are teaching yourselves about mental health, and y'all are having people on who are like therapists and in the field, like kind of coming on. So that's some goodness that came out of it.
Oh no, for real.
Definitely. And that's always the perspective I've taken on a lot of things, on all the bad moments of my life. I once had somebody say something to me about, don't romanticize things in your life. I'm not romanticizing things. I mean, the fact of the matter is I'm learning from these things. I can see bad situations as good things and not romanticize it. It's still a bad situation. It's still trauma, but I'm learning from it. I'm growing out of this. It's usually those bad moments that we do grow, it is those negative emotions that help us grow in the long run.
Anyone who tells me to not romanticize everything in life is just like, I'm going to romanticize some shit. I'm going to romanticize some shit at some points. And even if you do romanticize some stuff, it's okay. Like, it's a concept for a reason, romanticizing things can help with your creativity. It can help with your drive and your motivation, man. Like, hey, romanticize whatever you want, in a balanced way, of course, right? Right. But romanticize life sometimes. And also, you can romanticize shit And I feel like you can also acknowledge like the gravity and reality of whatever the fuck's going on, right? I think you can kind of like do both. Yeah.
Look at this.
I like your guest. He's pretty cool. My favorite guest so far. Well, I appreciate it.
I don't know who this chick is. She's been blowing us up all night.
I don't know, but I gotta find a way to message her after and get her digits or something, man.
You should.
Y'all have any other or any more kind of like mental health questions? Any kind of like mental health things y'all want to know about?
Shep, anything?
No, man. It's been a really good one. It's been a really good discussion tonight.
Yeah.
I felt a little rambly tonight, but I'm not on my A game today. But
you felt a little what? You felt a little what?
Oh, I said I felt a little rambly tonight.
Rambly.
I wasn't quite coherent on some of the things I was trying to get at, but like
me either. It's okay, man. Like I find that it's so funny because when people find out I'm a therapist, then that quote unquote rambly stuff can happen. You know, because like when you're a therapist like me, it's like I know I have the tendency to like go into like listening mode when someone's talking about something important to them, right? Yeah. So I'll just watch and let you do your thing, you know. So I think it's on both of us. So I blame both of us. You know?
All in all, though, I'm happy with it. So thanks for joining us tonight, man.
Yeah, thank you, man.
No problem.
It's been a good one. Another Mental Health Monday in the books. I might not be here on Wednesday. Shep might be flying solo dolo.
We'll find out.
I have some family stuff to attend. But Darreon, thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Peace.